The second part of today's lesson is the introduction to now we're actually going to find the values of x. Before we were just factoring and making it look a little bit different. But this time we're actually solving. And if you'll notice on the previous page it was x squared then x and then a number. But if you just have an x squared, you're going to be solving by square rooting. Okay? So the first thing you're going to do is square root. And you get x equals. Well, what is x equals? 6. But the thing is that we're trying to find the value that makes it so when I put x in, I get 36. Well, positive 6 works. 6 squared is 36. But if I also put in negative 6 and I square it, I also get positive 36. Therefore, every time you square root, there's always a plus or minus. Okay? Let's jump to number 5. Square root, x equals plus or minus. I feel like that's something you're going to forget. I don't want you to forget that. Now the thing is, it's not perfect like 36, so I have to tree it. Circle the doubles. There's 2 sets of doubles. 2 times 2 is 4. What I didn't circle goes in the center. Okay. All right. Let's go to number 11. First of all, please put an equal sign. Square root. X equals plus or minus. Now, I rewrite this as rad 5 over rad 36. I can't take the square root of 5, so I leave it. And the square root of 36 is 6. Since I don't have a radical in the denominator, I'm good to go. Okay. Let's look at number 14. Square root. X equals plus or minus. Well, when I tree 7, it's prime, so I just leave it as rad 7. If I can't do anything with it, then don't do anything with it. All right. Let's look at number 17. Now, number 17 is different from all of these because they said x squared. This doesn't say x squared, so I need to make it say x squared. Since the 5 is touching, 5 is multiply, the opposite is divide. Goes in 18 times. Now that it says x squared equals square root, x equals plus or minus, tree the 18, circle the doubles, the double goes on the outside, what's left goes on the inside. I'll show you how to check it when you come back. All right, let's jump to number 23. If you look at number 23, there's a whole lot that's on this side that needs to go away, the 2 and the 10. The 10 is what goes away first. You get negative 2x squared equals negative 18. Divide by negative 2. X squared equals 9. Now that it says x squared, square root, x equals plus or minus 3. Okay. Let's do number 26. Get rid of the 20 first. It's very similar to number 23, but there's a fraction in there, so I just want to acknowledge it to make sure we're good to go. Now, whenever I have a fraction, I multiply what's on the bottom. Then I'm left with negative 1x squared equals 16. Divide by negative 1. X squared equals negative 16. Square root. X equals plus or minus. Now, this is a negative 16, which means we're getting into, we have a negative, which gets into imaginary numbers. In Algebra 1, it would be no solution, but now that we're in honors, that means I. So the square root of 16 is 4, and then I. So the answer is plus or minus 4i. Let's turn the page. This page is very similar, but now instead of it just being x squared, it's the quantity x plus 3 squared. It's all right. We can do it. These two questions are exactly the same, so I'm going to cross that off. Square root. Then I'm left with x plus 3, because that cancels out the squared, equals plus or minus 5. Now here's where it's a little bit different. You subtract 3, but it's not plus or minus 8. The answers are negative 3 plus 5 or negative 3 minus 5. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. That's one of the answers. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. That's the other answer. Now you can check it. 2 plus 3 is 5. Squared is 25. Good. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. Squared is 25. Good. Okay. Let's do another one. Let's try number 5. Since that whole thing is squared, I can square root. X plus 14 equals plus or minus 2. Subtract 14. X equals. You have two options. Negative 14 plus 2 and negative 14 minus 2. Negative 14 plus 2 is negative 12. Negative 14 minus 2 is negative 16. Okay, let's do a square root on that, or an equals. So let's look at number 8. Square root, square root. X minus 8 equals, oops, let's do that in blue, plus or minus rad 82. Okay, now 82 can't perfectly be done, so if I tree it, I get 2 and 41, but it's prime, so I just keep it the way it is. Now when I add 8, I can't add 8 to a radical, so you'll like this one better. The answer is just 8 plus or minus rad 82, and I'll show you how to check that another time in the calculator, because that one's more difficult to check. All right, let's jump to number 14. Now, number 14 differs from above because it not only says this squared, but it also has the negative 2. So before I square root, I have to get rid of that negative 2. Now that it's just a squared, square root, x minus 3 equals plus or minus 5, plus 3 plus 3. So I have two options. 3 plus 5 is an answer, or 3 minus 5. 3 plus 5 is 8, and 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Okay, I can check it. Let me show you. I'll check the positive one first. 8 minus 3 is 5, squared is 25, times negative 2, negative 50. Check. Negative 2 minus 3, negative 5. Squared, 25, times negative 2, negative 50. All right, let's jump. Let's do this one right here. Let's add that right there. Let's do number 20. We got a whole lot going on. We have this squared and the 4 and the 16. So first add 16. 4, x plus 5 squared. Negative 12 plus 16 is 4. Divide by 4. X plus 5 squared equals 1. Now that it's just squared, square root, x plus 5 equals, the square root of 1 is 1, so plus or minus 1. Then minus 5. So I have two options as answers, positive 1 minus 5 and negative 1 minus 5. 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. Before I submit, let me check. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1. Squared is 1, times 4 is 4. And 4 minus 16 is negative 12. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1. Squared is 1. Times 4 is 4. Minus 16 is negative 12. So I'm good to go. Your homework is to finish this page. Oops, excuse me. And finish this page. I will have answers in the classroom.